Hello, everyone. Welcome to our ninth anti-racism learning series. Since July 2020, we have now 9 months. We can say the baby is ready to join the community. Thank you so much to our wonderful audience who help us and contribute to educate ourselves and our member on the anti-racism and its intersectionality with the intercultural field. I am Papa Balandong from SIETAR España and SIETAR Europa. Today, I and my colleagues from the SIETAR Europa Board of Directors, Yvonne van der Poel, interim president of SIETAR Netherlands, and Christine Taylor, have the responsibility to drive this session. We ask you after the presentation to send your question to the Q&A channel because we can lose them in the chat. We will share also our community guideline with you. So this session match also with the commemoration of International Day for the Elimination of All Forms of Racial Discrimination set on the 21st of March, a day mandated by the United Nations General Assembly. So we encourage ourselves and others to stand hand in hand for diversity. Before presenting our special guest, I just want to share with you 1 minute of Kora song. And please breathe deeply. Thank you so much. And right now, we have the pleasure to introduce Şeydâ Buurman-Kutsal. Şeydâ Buurman-Kutsal, he's a Europe-wide known trainer and coach within the field of diversity, and inclusion. She has educated organizations like Erasmus University Rotterdam, ministries, non-profit organization, police force in Europe successfully. She has a background as a social worker with Turkish roots, living in different European countries. She is certified coach and a trainer for the Blue Eyes, Brown Eyes exercise, and she is founder and director of Şeydâ Buurman Diversity Consultancy. And he's a lecturer at Fontys University of Applied Science in the Netherlands, teaching diversity and civic education. Dear Şeydâ Buurman-Kutsal, diversity consultant, change agent, polarization expert, what means understanding the influence of power relation in the dialogue about racism and what we can take away.
Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity, Papa Bala, to give you an answer or a couple of answers to this question, which is quite complicated if you look at it, and very simple if you have a closer look at it. I will try to give a couple of answers that I could find within my work. Thanks for the introduction. But first of all, I would like to have a look at what is happening with all the attendees here in the room, in the digital surroundings. So my question to all of you would be to write down your, maybe your first name or last name, whatever you like, and behind that, the pronouns that you would like to be called with. So I will start and write in the chat my pronouns behind my name, but make sure that you choose the option all panelists and attendees so everybody can see it. So this is Seyda, and I write behind it she, her, because I didn't only learn that these are mine, but I also decided that these are my pronouns. And if you don't want to, please only write your name or maybe an X instead. Thank you so much. This is so fast. Wonderful. So I was trying to count, which is quite impossible with such a big group, but we can see what is happening and that we have, you know, we have humans deciding what they want to be addressed with, how they want to be addressed, and taking a chance to make it visible. And most of the people attending have decided to put their first name. Some did decide to also have the last name, and some put the pronouns first and then the name, and we have a variety within that also. And of course, there's also participants who decided not to do this. And I want you to know that I appreciate every effort in thinking about making a decision about this, because it means that you have the freedom to decide for yourself. And this is exactly what I wanted to talk to you about today, about freedom of decisions, about what is happening to you in contact with other people, but also within these digital meeting times, within your private space, your room where digital meetings come to you into your home environment. A lot of times, sometimes that is okay, and sometimes it's a problem to you. So we will have a closer look at this. I'm going to share a couple of insights that I had and that I found within my years of experience, and I want to share my thoughts with you, and I would like to invite you to just have a look at what you can use and what you can't. See it as a supermarket, and know that I will respond to your questions about this and to your way of dealing with this, because this is my job. This is something that I decided to always react on when I have the decision and the freedom to react, which I have now because I'm the one who's speaking about this issue. So we're going to talk about power relations, and I, as a trainer, as a female trainer, as a female anti-racist trainer coming from Germany, with Turkish roots, living in the Netherlands, and being in contact with a lot of people from all around the world, experience what happens within the power relation between me and my attendees, the people that are in my classroom or that I educate, how they react to me as the person that I am. People react to me as a person, they react to the knowledge that I share with them, and then they decide. You also had the decision to write down your name or not to do it. And what we could see is that there was a variety on answers that we saw. And the freedom to do this is the component that I want to talk to you about. And I want you to have a closer look if you didn't answer to my question, and would like to ask you to think about your privilege to do that or not to do that. Did you really feel privileged, or did you just make a decision? Which is a thing that most of the times happens, that you're, making a decision that isn't really conscious. So within this, I guess around 40 minutes, I'm going to tell you, share PowerPoint and tell my story to you. And then you will have the opportunity to ask your questions about this. And maybe it's a good idea to take notes now and then, if you like, if you want to remember to ask a question at the end. So what we are going to do is I'm going to share my PowerPoint with you right now, and try not to look at the chat anymore, because my wonderful moderators, core moderators, are doing this for me and will make sure that they don't miss anything that we are going to answer at the end. So what we have here, does this work all right? Can I get a signal from you? Pababala, is the PowerPoint okay?
Yes, it's okay.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. So I have a trigger warning for you, because sometimes what I say when I talk about racism and power relations, it can be really stressful. It can be stressful for you when you are in a privileged position, and it can also stressful for you when you hear what I say when you are in a marginalized position. So I want to ask you if you feel welcome within this SIETAR webinar, and I want to ask you if you have an idea how that feeling evolved, happened. So what happened that you do or do not feel welcome here? Maybe a couple of ideas. We do not have prepared an immediate translation for you, so that if you don't understand English or my English so well, you would be able to understand what we are going to do this evening. We are meeting online, which means that maybe because of technical difficulties, you cannot follow everything that we say or do this evening. Maybe you cannot see, and you have no idea of what is shown in the PowerPoint that we are seeing right now, or you don't have an actual idea of how Papa Bala and me are looking at you right now at the screen. But maybe all of this is not an issue for you, and you just weren't aware that it might be for some people. So when I start talking about what happens with power relations, I try to think about my position as a trainer, an educator, with the message that I have to tell. And I just learned that within these technical possibilities, that it's important to have these 3 stars. I just learned this yesterday. And not only 3 empty spaces after my trigger warning, because when a computer reads what I have written for people who cannot see, then after the word trigger warning, without the 3 spaces or the 3 stars, the message would be there immediately. So you wouldn't have a chance to, to put the sound off, not to hear it anymore. So this is something that I just have learned. Somebody raised their hands. I think because of the message, it's important. I would like to hear what the question is. So maybe you write it down in the Q&A, and I would like to listen and answer the question. Could we hear the first participant that raised hand, please?
Well, currently there is nobody with a raised hand, but we do have one question in the Q&A that was from 1 minute ago.
Mm-hmm.
Can you see it yourself, Şeydâ?
No, I can't see it.
Yeah, okay.
Papa?
Yeah,
okay.
It's from Pamela Strathgate. Pamela asked, at the beginning, could it also have been fear, confusion, indecision, or something other than privilege that prevented a person from responding with their pronouns?
Yes, of course, that's possible. And I raised the question because I find it really important to ask yourself if it is a privilege or not. So if we take the time for just a couple of seconds to think about this, then we get a lot of answers that could be helping us to be in contact, considering power relations, and asking ourselves what role they play, not if they play a role because they always do, but what role they play. So thank you very much for this question. I think it's important to know that I'm not saying that it's either the one or the other, and one is good or bad. Maybe I'm trying to talk about having taking notice of it and of the importance of it, of our own influence of power within situations. Because most of the time we're really not aware of it, and just like now, I'm maybe it looks like I'm in power because I'm doing the lecture, but really I don't feel so powerful because there are so many variables that are that the quality of the lecture is depending on. That it feels really powerless because you have the attendees that can leave all at once, or the techniques or whatever could happen. So we are not thinking about the power that you feel, but the power you have in relation to the other person because of who you are, or because of where you have been born, or because of the gender that you were born in, or because the age that you have been growing into. So we were at this trigger warning, and I wanted to ask you to think about, if you, knowing that racism exists within your surroundings and the country that you live in, do you want to be treated the same way as people are treated that are being discriminated against because of racism? Do you want to be treated the same way? And I'd like you to again write your answer in the chat. Can we see this? So do you want to be treated the same way as people are treated that are being discriminated because of racism? please write your answer in the chat. Thank you so much. So obviously there's, I didn't really wonder if anybody would say yes, but it could be possible, because there are also people who think of, I'd rather, you know, have the situation than another person. Of course, those people are there too, and which is a wonderful thought, but it doesn't really change the situation. So thank you. It's a hard question. Thank you so much. So we are going to return. This was the trigger that I wanted to warn you about, because do we see? We don't. Excuse me. There we are again. So when we think about that, it might be a trigger for you. And what I'm going to do is try to, I'm not trying to comfort you if you are in a privileged position. I'm trying to comfort you if you're not. So this is the little trigger that I was talking about that was coming. And I'm coming with this because of the thoughts of Jane Elliott, who once said humans are not born racist. We learn to act racist, which means we can unlearn it. And this is the reason why she educated me. She started in 1968 to educate children about racism and the existence of that. And the wonderful thing is that now we have, from neuroscience, we have a lot of proof that it actually works this way. So I would like to invite you to have a look at these really wonderful articles that are written in the SIETAR EU journal, and to our webinars and anti-racism learning series, because there's a lot of knowledge combined in there, which, you know, for me, it comes to this within our intercultural training and education and science field. We deal with this, and we are the ones who can, you know, put it into action and give it further. When talking about my experience, this is coming from my work with Brown Eyes, Blue Eyes, and we are learning and understanding the anatomy of prejudices and the existence and the mechanics of power relations. And by doing that, we see, and I have another trigger warning for you, we see how people act in the real world. And we put this the other way around within the workshop, when discriminating people for in the workshop for a short period of time, discriminating them because according to their eye color, instead of other physical things they cannot change on their body. And then we are going to reflect on that. And when we do this with children, we do this with students, with grown-ups, with leaders, with employees, we do this with teachers and professors, and they all react the same immediately. What they do is they react to the system of racism because they know it. They know how to react on it, but they know the system, but they do not know the strategy to deal with in the position they have within the workshop. Because most of the time, and I say most of the time, not always, most of the time people who are in the discriminated position in real life will be in the privileged group in the workshop. I'm going to come back to this a bit later, so you have an idea of how it works. I had a participant of a learning series, which was a long learning process. And this professional said to me, when the person had some feedback about discriminatory behavior within the learning series, the person said, I have been working as a translator for foreigners, and that was in the legal system for over 2 decades, and no one ever told me I mistreated or discriminated them. When talking about power relations, there are a couple of words that are really interesting here. And when you think about the person that had said that, I would like to ask you what person comes into mind when you think this is a person who was in their peer group learning about discrimination, trying to understand how inclusion works, and saying, I've been working as a translator for foreigners for a long time and no one ever told me I mistreated them or discriminated them. When we have a look at this, we think about the person in our heads who might have said this. I'm going to tell you this was a white woman, above 50 years old, a bit more actually, wanting to serve her community. A very warm, welcoming person who tried to understand how inclusion works and how she could stop to discriminate. And while she was doing that, she thought she had to defend herself and say there was no reason for me as a trainer to tell her, listen, I have some feedback here for you. And I think it's important for you to have a look at it with me because it disturbs people and it hurts people, and I cannot be next to it because I am an anti-racist diversity and inclusion trainer, and I cannot let this happen within my room. And this was her answer, which means that a white person with a lot of experience felt the freedom to tell me, as a person from a marginalized group, that I was wrong. Because people who in her job depended on her translations never told her that they felt mistreated by her or discriminated by her. And this is what happens a lot of times within contact with people. So if I don't have a look at who is talking to whom and what is my position and who am I, then there are a lot of chances that I miss within learning. Again, I'm not talking about right or wrong here, but I'm giving you a couple of insight in what I experience as a trainer in my work when I talk about power relations and how people react to this, for example, getting feedback. Another person told me, this was in a huge organization of company of 3,500 people working. He had a team of 80 people, and he said, within diversity and inclusion anti-racism training, my door is always open and all my employees know they can come to me with every issue they experience. I get little comments about racism, but I'm happy to help you learn how to open your door. Again, I ask you, what do you think, what kind of person was this talking to me within the diversity and inclusion training? And do you have an idea and a fantasy about this person and what happened within the contact with us? Again, this was why we were working on understanding how discrimination and racism work and how you could, support your colleagues to learn to understand signals of oppressions. And when I saw this quote from Svetlana Buko in the last SIETAR EU article, first we need to remember that history is written by the winners, she said. I thought, yeah, this is about the language that we learn to understand. When this language is written and given to us by winners, it's really hard to know how to understand how to deal with racism when you are in a marginalized position, because you don't have the language that you need to also be the winner. You need to find a way that is your way, and we don't have so many strategies, and we are not served with a lot of strategies to also understand how. What I want to say within this is that in the system of racism and within the power relations, we need to accept that there is a difference in power. We have a privileged group and a marginalized group, an oppressed group, which doesn't mean that the privileged group does this knowingly, and but is served by the system. It's served by our educational system, by our language, by our scientific system, and everything that is not privileged isn't served by this. So we are still trying to find ways to understand how to be able not to talk about empowerment, but to talk about strength and value of what people in marginalized positions had to learn to survive, and what they had to learn to have the same positions. And when the stories, the history are written by winners, that means that we can switch this and change it around and learn another language. And that is what's happening right now, not only within science, but also within the trainings, that people find new knowledge to describe what is happening to them. And when we talk about these power relation positions, we are talking about individuals who are meeting each other. We are talking about historical backgrounds. We are talking about sociological influences, about psychological influences, philosophical influences, and we're talking about political influences. When working internationally, that really gets complicated and interesting, of course, as intercultural professionals to deal with this. And it is our field of influence because we deal with it. And when we can see these influences, and when we can decide to influence the power relations that are already there, then we can be actually active anti-racist if we choose to. I'd like to quote Ibram Kendi here, that he said that, how was it? He said, there are not really not racists. A lot of people talk about, I'm not a racist. But when it comes then, a lot of people say I'm not racist. They don't want to be racist, but they act racist. Ibram Kendi says, there is only one way. You are racist, which means you are reinforcing acting racist and reinforcing the system by doing that, or you are anti-racist, which means you are active. There is not really a thing like not racist, because you are when you are within the contact between people, even when you read things and you don't react to them, you are active. By not doing something, you are still active and allowing the system to continue. And we as intercultural professionals have a lot of contacts and the knowledge, background of all these knowledge fields that we can use to have our influence and to make a point of being anti-racist and to preparing ourselves for making a safe space for marginalized people within our educational environments, if we choose to. Another example of what I hear from my participants and people that I consult are in break times. I don't know, maybe you also have that during the breaks you get the most important information, which is in the organizations or in the classrooms, but are not shared in the open. And there again is a trigger warning for people who might be disturbed by the message that is coming right now. And that is, I couldn't say anything because it would mean the end of my career here. I'm sorry I couldn't contribute to make the racism that is happening here visible. And that is something that I hear a lot of times, which makes it complicated for leaders who have understood that there is racism within their organization and they want to use their power to make a change in this. And they invite me to come over and have a change process of cultural change. And they discover that there is not a lot of people who want to speak about it together with their colleagues and their peers, which means that they have a lot more work to do than they thought at first. And if you're lucky, they are ready to have a big contribution in time and effort in this to change the culture, which means a long process, because it takes time for people to feel safe to share within their groups of peers, or what is supposed to be peers, what is happening to them in everyday working life. And with working online, this had got, I think it worsened. It's much worse than it was before, because nobody really sees what's happening. There are less bystanders. And of course, you would hope that bystanders come in between, but a lot of times that's not the case. When we look at the influence of power relations, we have the power of definition. Who is the one who defines what words are going to be used? And who is the one who defines what we are going to call someone? It starts with your name. If someone decides to mispronounce your name, then that's something wrong in the power relation. It means that the attention for you as a person isn't there. It's not important enough to learn it. Your time is not, you don't want to, or you feel bad about using the time to learn someone's name, or maybe you feel bad to ask if it is right. And maybe you feel even insecure. It means that you use your freedom to pronounce a name wrong. And within the contact between people, it's important that we understand that this is a form of power relation, and most of the times it is against everything that is not the norm. Papawala and me, we had a little talk about our names, and we tried to understand and to learn together, and we took an effort to do that, and we are both okay. When we had our first contact, we agreed that it was okay that if we do it wrong, then we are ready to learn it, to do it right, and we will help each other with this. So with this little understanding, we have a common ground of that we both are in the position of learning. But when we have learned to say, oh no, it's okay, I know it's hard to pronounce my name for you in your country, then this means that I'm taking a lower power position. And we see that in a lot of structures within our learning systems, how we deal with the words that are being served. We have the power of words, and we have seen this in the inauguration of the new president of the United States of America, Joe Biden. The choice of the ones who are going to speak out the words is very important, and is a signal for the world even. And the persons who are allowed to, I don't remember her name right now, but the people who are living in the Netherlands will understand who I mean. The person who was assigned to translate the poem that was said during the inauguration was a white person who doesn't speak English very well, but it was the person that was going to translate it because it was a famous person. Now, of course, there was a lot of trouble about this. This happening. It really was a problem, and luckily the person herself said, I'm going to step back. I don't want to do this because I wasn't aware what was happening, and now that I understand, I don't want to translate it anymore. I hope there was someone will get the space, a person of color, just like the one who wrote the poem, who understands where the words are coming from and who is at home in English. And this is a big decision. It was a big thing in the Netherlands. The power of not only of the words, but who is going to speak the words is enormous. And how ready am I to give the power to another person to maybe to use my words and to be able to take steps that, you know, because people are younger maybe than I am, get a podium for this. And then again, we talk about the power of stories, which means that there are a lot of stories that help us to understand situations and to understand, to have a picture of what is happening to people. When we talk, especially when we talk about racism, if racism doesn't happen to you, it's very important to know and understand stories. But what also happens is that people of power and people in privileged situations take over the stories of people who are being discriminated against and have to deal with racism and use them for their own benefits. And within them, you know, the Christina Taylor Storycraft said, which I really honor very much. If you didn't see it, please watch it back on the list of webinars in the learning series. She said, it really matters who tells them. It's not only about how you tell the story, but who tells whose story. Please consider that. Another story, someone who said something that is really powerful, I think, is when you think about words. Melvin Kolff said there is no such thing as at-risk youth. Their environment is a risk to them, not the youth themselves. So when you have a look at the words that we are using to describe problematic situations, we belittle people without wanting to do this. But we are served with the words of the winners, and that's how we see, look at our world. If we are not taking notice and take a little time to think about what happens when I flip those words and flip the situation, just like in brown-eyed, blue-eyed exercise happens, I won't see it. So when flipping these power relations, that's actually what's happening in the training Brown Eyes, Blue Eyes. We are discriminating people who are normally in privileged positions, the blue-eyed persons, and we discriminate them. And by that, we show them how hard it is to find a strategy to deal with it and what strategies they would use to do it. At the same time, the people who are in a privileged situation in the brown-eyed, blue-eyed training, the brown-eyed people, are the ones who are comforted and who get privileges and have to understand what happens when you cannot do anything wrong. My first workshop, Brown Eyes, Blue Eyes, that I did almost 25 years ago, Jane Elliott put me in a position that I had privilege, and I was ready to watch my blue-eyed colleagues to be discriminated against for half a day and then have a reflection of, again, half a day. And what I saw was I couldn't do anything wrong anymore. And I didn't know that feeling. It was so relaxing and so comfortable that I thought, I want everybody to be able to understand how this feels. Of course, I'm happy that I became a strong woman and I had to educate myself to get a position that I wanted to reach. I'm happy because it made me stronger. If I had been comfortable, I don't know if I had gotten so strong and so wanting to achieve something. But when I look at what happened to my blue-eyed colleagues, I thought, yeah, that means also that it doesn't really matter what they do. It will always look bad. Just like people in marginalized situations are being seen as marginalized and are being seen, I remind you of the word, and people who have to be empowered while they are strong already because they survived the situation. So Jane Elliott, she did this exercise the first time in '69. And that, of course, is a long, long time ago with the power relation system and the the systemic racism is still working the same way. We don't really use different words for what is happening when we are reflecting. 25 years ago when I was in my first training, and ever since then I trained thousands and thousands of people in very different companies, and the reactions are always the same. People try to deal with a situation, they don't try to stop it. And then we are back again at the point of there's no such thing as not racist. The system is racist, and if we want to change it, we have to be actively anti-racist. And only if we are active, consciously active, then we can change the system. So what we do within there is that we have a privileged group who is served with a prejudice about, in this case, the discriminated group, that is the blue-eyed group. And they learn to see them as a discriminated group. Then they see, they are going to see them being treated according to the prejudice. For example, the blue-eyed people have trouble learning. They have to get longer time for their learning experience. They are slow. They are not social. They are not going to help each other. They're going to have trouble to find their pencils and paper. They're not going to be prepared, and so on and so on. And they're going to be very angry, and they can be aggressive, and they will try to change what I'm saying, etc., etc. And what we will see and observe is they will react to this treatment and to all the words that I'm giving people with during this exercise. Then we observe what they do, and we get an answer to our privilege, which most of the time is, see, I told you so. They are aggressive, they are not prepared, they are angry, they don't agree with me, they want to change the situation, they don't want to learn something. So when we look at them, they look marginalized. And what you see here is a picture of a grote racisme experiment. It's a documentary in the Netherlands that that was recorded when I did one of those workshops. And you see young adults here who have the color. The ones in the middle are the ones that are discriminated. And we put them in the middle of the room because they are visible as people who are in marginalized positions are visible in society also. You see them easily because of their skin color, for example, or because they look like they are visible transgender, or they are red like a woman, or whatever other minority position they are seen as. So they are always visible, and that's why they sit in the middle. And of course, we can have a good look at them and observe what they are doing. And the people around them are the brown-eyed people who are in privileged position, which is, of course, it's much nicer to sit around than to sit in the middle. So the position that they are in is actually really much more comfortable. And what happens then is that we have this system. I told you I was going to tell you about how the system of these power relations work, is that we have an A, and that is me. My letter A was jumping the wrong way now. I'm sorry about that. So I'm the leader. I'm the one in power. I am defining the words, and I'm defining the groups, and I'm defining who has privileges and who has not. And we have another group that is the Bs, that is the brown-eyed people who are watching this and who are agreeing with this by not acting, by not stopping me, by not saying that it is not okay what I do. And they start with this without the group being in the room already, and they continue with this when the group is in the room. Of course, then most of the time it gets much harder to do this. So we have this ABC model, it's called, and you see that in society also. Every time that you read an article where a racist remark is and you don't react to it, then you can see that you are using your privilege not to react. whenever you are in a minority position, in a marginalized position, and you're trying to change your situation, you are going to be seen as someone who is oh my God, I don't remember the word, who is not ready to contribute, who is an angry person, who doesn't want to learn, who is maybe extreme, or has her period, or whatever things that people are called who try to change their situations. They are not seen as equals. So if you are in the marginalized position, whatever you do, you just can't change the situation. That doesn't mean that people in marginalized situations or Black people cannot change their situation. They do, and they get stronger, and they have a lot of knowledge about how to do, and they involve a lot of strategy how to deal with racism and how to change it. But the system is not really going to change. Racism is not going to go away if the people in privileged positions are not getting active in stopping it and in changing it. And of course, I should have given you a trigger warning before this, because it really means I want everyone who is in a privileged position to be active and to change it. So what the person in power does is to build up and to keep a power position. Sets by setting different rules and by defining and by changing the rules every single time somebody thinks that they understood what the rules are. The people in the privileged position, they receive and accept a different treatment than the marginalized group. They behave according to the treatment that they are getting, and they are the ones with the privilege in society and the organization that you are in. You can ask yourselves what the short-term and the long-term effects of these treatments are. You are starting to think that you deserve it. And you are not really remembering that this might not be, everyday life for everybody who is around you, which, I mean, of course you don't. If you have a privilege doesn't hurt. And you really need the information of people, who are not experiencing privilege and power. You need them within conversations with them if they are ready to and if they want to, or you can read a lot about their experiences. But without the exchange, you won't ever get an understanding of what not having a privilege means. So we are really talking about the effect of power relations. And we are not talking about the intentions that people have when they are within a privileged position. So I'm really convinced that everybody has good intentions and wants racist structures to stop, who want to stop racism and who want to make a change. But the effect of not being active is something different than your intentions. You understand that this is a big invitation to become activists. So we also have the oppressed people in marginalized positions who receive a different treatment than they deserve, of course, and they behave and react according to that treatment, not because that's their character. We have a lot of different possibilities to react in minority positions, but they all have the same effect. It doesn't change the situation. It makes you stronger, but it doesn't change the situation and it doesn't change the system. They are the ones without a privilege in society and organization. And you can ask yourselves again, what do you think are the short-term and the long-term effects of this? So when thinking about this, again, there is a trigger warning for you. The person who said, I have been working as a translator for foreigners in the legal system for over 2 decades, and no one ever told me I mistreated or discriminated them. Within a room as a translator with people who are you were going to help, whatever you do, you are the one who is in power. When you are white and nobody tells you that they feel mistreated, and or discriminated, this only means that you have a lot of privilege and that people might not feel free enough to tell you if they have a situation with you when they feel mistreated, because it is not an equal situation. You are in a very unequal power relation, and being able to say something like this means that you are, at this moment, are not aware of your position. It doesn't mean anything about your character or what kind of person you are or what kind of intentions you have. It only means that you are not aware yet, and that there's you know, a lot of room for understanding. The same goes for the person, for the leader, the manager who said, my door is always open. An open door doesn't really mean anything if I am not aware of my position of power. If I think and I have the intention of being open for everything that my coworkers come, my employees come with me, to me with, my intentions don't mean that they will come. I have to be a bit more active, and well, I'm happy to be able to say that with both of the persons, we had the time, and they wanted to do the work that is needed to understand and to find a way to get into uncomfortable conversations and to understand what's happening with people. But this doesn't happen because you want it to. It's a lot of work to be able to make these safe spaces. So this was, for so far, the last thing I wanted to share with you in my presentation. I'm very curious about your experiences and, you know, your stories and your ideas about power relations in your work. And if you like to have an exchange, you can find me all over the internet. Just contact me. But we have, I think, a lot of questions, and I'm ready to answer them for you.
Thank you so much, Sarah Şeydâ Buurman-Kutsal, for your great presentation and very emotional presentation. I think we have the map of the influence of power relation in the dialogue about racism. Yes, we have a lot of questions. I will just start the first one from our colleague George Simons. George says, stop making privilege and absolutely. There are many kinds of privilege that different people enjoy.
Well, now we are in a bit of a catch-22 situation, aren't we? Because I'm the leader here, and there's yes, George, I know. I'm guessing. I don't know. I'm guessing you are yourself white male, over 50 years old, quite in a powerful position. But that was just a guess. Should I stop if somebody wants me to? I won't. I don't stop. I want to provoke the question, and I want to be in discussion with you about this, because this is a room where we can talk about the privileges and where we can find a way to understand what kind of different privileges are there and what room to ask for a change do I have. So if I'm taking a strong position about power relations and privileges, that means I'm asking you to listen to me and understand. And if you tell me to stop, then am I the educator here maybe, or don't I have the right to speak about this? I understand that it disturbs because it's a very strong position, but I have also learned that with soft hands, no, how do you call this? Zachte handen maken stelende wonden. This is something that I learned in the Netherlands, and I understand that it's a very Dutch thing. There is no nice way to say this. Maybe this is what I wanted to say. Soft hands make what? If you have a look in the chat, you will see the translation of what I just said. So, well, thank you for your reaction, but this is exactly what is happening when we talk about privileges. Of course, it's not absolute, but they are there, and as long as there is not yet an equal position for all humans, we have to have a close look of our privileges and the meaning of it. My privilege of being a bit older than the people that most of the time I educate right now means that I need to make space for the experience of younger people, because I don't experience what they do. I have much more power. And for example, I've been ethnic profiled a long time by the Dutch police, by the German police, by the French police. And that changed because I got older. This is a privilege. I didn't earn it. I'm just getting older and I'm happy with it, but I didn't earn this. This is a privilege I have, and I can share it. If I want my privilege not to be there and not to be seen, I can't share it anymore. So I use it. I use this power to make space for people who are marginalized by society right now. This is my trick.
We have another one from Gloria Kirkens. If you talk about a power relation, is it similar as the term ranking?
Well, I have to think a bit about this. Both happen in your head. You can make a ranking in your head and then, shuffle it. I'm not so sure if it's the same. I'm not sure. It's a good question. I have to think about this, and I hope we can have a discussion about this. You can change the ranking. Thank you for the question. You can change the ranking, but that doesn't necessarily change the power relation at the same time.
Kimberly Sutherland, legal translator. I think the person's privilege is speaking, but we must also recognize the position she held in the institution in which she was a tool. Her own attitude, self-image, and the place she has in a system reinforcing a racist, hierarchical structure. Don't you think? If not, why?
Yes, I think so. I can understand that the structure of an organization makes what you can do and what you not can do. So I agree very much with you. Thank you for making this visible for us, because that's actually what's happening. We are a tool when working, but that doesn't mean that we don't have an influence in what we can do. We have a lot of possibilities of influence, and in different countries we have different possibilities, what kind of free room for what kind of tool we want to be. So it means, what I want to say is, I agree with you, and still you can ask yourself, can I actively understand or get feedback from people in a way that they feel free and safe to tell me, maybe outside the organization, or maybe through someone they trust and I don't. There are many ways to get feedback from people of how they perceive my actions, if I'm open to that. To me, the sign that, and I know this person didn't do this. So what kind of a tool do I want to be?
For Jessica Schnick, you talk about racism, prejudice, and discrimination. I've seen several definitions of these terms. Can you share how you define each of them?
Yeah, there are so many definitions. I love your question. I would like to give a lecture about the different definitions of all of those terms, and I think there's one more that I didn't call, that was categorizing, which also is something that we need to talk about. So maybe the easiest definition of discrimination is treating people differently because of their looks without reason. That's maybe the easiest one, and yeah, I think it would be great to have, you know, one hour a lecture, or maybe an exchange about the different definitions that we have, because they also change within time, and there's a lot of meaning in the words in there, in the definitions. Thanks for the inspiration. Who knows, maybe Şeydâ, you will do that.
We have another anonymous question. Is the European DNI fair to USA focused, using American literature and authors, American example, American standards, taking at length about US politics, etc.? It seems that Europe is copying instead of developing DNI on its own terms and particularities?
Yes and no. I love your question. I love your question. You know, I was asking myself that when I was thinking about the APA norms, with which worldwide, but of course in Europe, universities are using as the norm on scientific work. So, and I find that strange, because that's an US American norm. Well, and that doesn't mean that it's the only one or the best one. So yeah, let's start there and ask ourselves, what is the norm? Also, when we talk about psychology, sociology, philosophy, no, not philosophy so much, that is interesting. But when we talk about psychology, what we use is US American science mostly as a basis. And I think there's a lot of room, but there's we have so many new literature, fresh European literature. Maybe it would be interesting to do a series of this, but my bookshelf is full with them, and I would like to challenge you to find European literature, because I think it's very important to use them. But of course, we have, you know, when you have a country that had been dealing with racism for such a long time in the open, I think it would be a bit ignorant to say we don't want your information and experience. We don't want to use this and translate it to ours, because, you know, what I've seen with an example is the brown-eyed blue-eyed exercise, which started in the United States a long time before we were talking about discrimination and racism here in Europe. And the system and the reactions are exactly the same. When we have reflections, we let people write their experiences, and we can compare them. And I'm talking about tens of thousands of people all over Europe, all over the United States. They are all similar. So yes, I agree with you. And no, we have to value what experience is already there and use that and compare it, of course, with what's happening here in the Netherlands. I wouldn't say it's I mean, drop it and don't use it. No. But that's my idea.
And Nell Payne asked, does Seyda have an opinion to share on the current debate over the definition of Islamophobia within the wider context of anti-racism?
Yeah, you know, do I have an opinion? You know, we have in Europe, we have a little different definition of racism than we have race in the United States. So there's the language thing again. When it comes to Islamophobia, that is in Europe we call it racism, and we choose to do it because the system is the same that's happening. And when you remember what I said about the power of words in the beginning, I don't have the power about how people describe me. When I go to France, I ask myself, can I get in now, or did something happen? What means that I will be in trouble because I'm a Muslim. And people define me as with different words, and I don't have the power to define myself. I have to correct them, and then they think something of me if I do that. So when talking about Islamophobia, we are dealing with the same system that that racism is.
Kimberly Sutherland asked, is it always true that privilege doesn't hurt? What about once there has been recognition of our privilege? Any views?
I'm sorry, I'm afraid I didn't understand the question.
Kimberly say, is it always true that privilege doesn't hurt? What about once there has been recognition of our privilege? Any views?
Oh yeah, oh, I love this question. No, it's not true that way. No, of course not. No, because it can be very hurtful if you recognize that you have a privilege that you didn't want to have, what your privilege caused. Of course, that can be very, very hurtful. And I understand the pain of, I mean, white males who didn't realize what position they have or what happens when they say something, when they want to explain something and help someone who, you know, and then by accident reinforcing racism by doing that. And that can be very hurtful and painful. Yes, of course. And actually, I have, you know, I have experienced it, and I have learned, and I hear again and again from people who are in the minority, put in the minority position, people who have been coming from families that have been enslaved, people who know what have lived marginalized positions that they got. They have a lot of strategies to deal with this and not to get hurt all the time, because I mean, believe me, it's, you cannot let that feeling come in all the time because it's happening too many times a day. So yeah, I agree. Good question. All the questions are good.
And anonymous questions ask, thank you so much. So my recommendation for people in poor position, being active and talk about their poor position and trying to make different position visible. Can I tell you again? Thank you so much. So your recommendation for people in poor position, being active and talk about their poor position and trying to make different position visible.
Exactly, wonderful. I love it. Do that, please. I mean, if you have a power position, if you're in a privileged position, use it to make a change. It's just wonderful. I love power positions. I mean, you can make a big change with them.
And Gloria Cookins asks, what is the right way of creating a safe space in a conversation? What can you say or do to give that message very clearly? Please advise. I can take again? Oh,
yes,
you have it.
I have it.
Okay.
There are numerous ways that you can do that, but it's not easy. There is from Gestalt therapy, maybe someone can translate that. There is this term that is called installing, that you install a group or a contact, that you make the rules from the beginning. And one of the things that you could do and choose to do is to say, I want to introduce an out rule, if it is okay for you. And to have an agreement that whenever someone for example, myself, says something that crosses a line for you that hurts, the person can say ouch and you will stop talking. And you don't have to understand why it was an ouch. Nobody has to explain it to you. And that means that you say, it's okay if you tell me to stop. But you have to agree on that before, when you start. And that makes the place safe if you have that agreement. That doesn't mean that there is no hurting, but it means that people understand that you respect what they say and they don't have to explain themselves, which gives a lot of room and freedom. Another thing that I have seen that works is to make rooms where people can meet themselves within like groups that are having alike experiences. That means, of course, that you're taking groups away from each other, and that you are you have to start to make safe spaces where people who are experiencing the same things have the room to talk about that. Just like, imagine maybe when you were talking about sexual harassment, it makes sense to give females or humans who are read as females a space where they can talk about these experiences together in a room without males or people who are read as males. Only then they will be able to come with their shared experiences and strategies that they found together to decide when they want to share what with you. So by taking the groups and putting them one like with like, it can be like with looks or experiences, that makes space for finding each other in the mixed group again. So that's something that you could do actively. Also, making people understand that you are fault friendly yourself. I forgot to do that. I gave you a trigger warning, but I forgot to tell you, please tell me if I say something that is not okay for you. Tell me if I use words that are really not okay anymore. I am learning. I'm a learning anti-racist D&I specialist, and my learning will never stop, because people only now start to learn how different we are, and in some positions how sometimes oppressed we are. So language is the utmost important thing when you are talking educator and consultant. So I forgot to do this in the beginning, but I find it valuable if you want people to to know that education is okay, and it's also okay for you to learn from the mistakes that you make regarding other people, because we cannot know everything, but we cannot be open for feedback, and also for maybe trying to understand how they would like to give you feedback. And you don't need to give an answer all the time. You can also say, thank you for your feedback, and I'm sorry that happened. And that's enough. You don't have to explain yourself, because the explanation is about you. It's not about the experience of the other person. So that's another possibility.
Thank you, Seyda. Do you want to take a drink, a cup of water?
It's okay.
Okay, right. And the next one is from Vural Seki Mez, asking what is the importance of hierarchy in terms of power relation in racism?
Well, yeah, that this had it has a lot of influence for our work, of course, because you can make the change. I believe in bottom-up learning and change processes, but a leader needs to be able to carry what is going to happen. So if you want to make a difference as an active anti-racist leader, you have to be very sure that you are ready to carry on your shoulders what is going to happen, because there's going to be a lot of people who are getting insecure, disturbed, and sometimes even angry, because they are afraid of their position that they have right now. While talking about racism, that is not the case, that you want to take away positions, but it means that people get insecure. And most of the time, people in marginalized positions who suffer from racism or have to deal with racism are the ones who are much more flexible in learning and understanding that their position is not in danger. Even worse, that they are used to being in a position that is in danger. So if you as a leader want to make sure that your organization is actively anti-racist, and you want to ban racism from your organization, it's important that you know what can come, but also the support that you can get, because people will value what you do, and you will hear stories that you would never have believed that you would hear, because you're going to be open for experiences of people that have learned a lot, which is very valuable and a big gift if you can get them.
We have a very big and large question from Kimberly Wan Landingham. Maybe you can take a note. Kimberly asked, have you read the book, Are We Born Racist? New Insight from Neuroscience and Positive Psychology. As I recall, this book quotes these studies that say that racism is the default programming, and we need to overcome this programming to be anti-racist. This seems to be opposite of Jane Elliott's position. This approach offers people an excuse and the power to change. I haven't tried your approach. Have you tried mine? What is your experience? I can tell you again. Okay.
I haven't read the book, okay. But I think I read an article about it, which is of course not the same. And I recall that there are a lot of systems of learning are explained, what happens within the neurological system. And actually, maybe I misunderstood, but I was seeing it as exactly the message that Jane Elliott was giving, which means that we are being filled with information that gives us a lot of biases, which we can unlearn again. But that's why I say we have to be active. It takes a lot of action to unlearn all of this, and it's possible. But I'll take it as a tip to read the book, because maybe I misunderstood.
Another one from Maria Tucker. Ask, please acknowledge the origin of blue-brown exercise, US 950s. We shouldn't appropriate a marginalized person without acknowledging it.
I'm not so sure if I acknowledge that Jane Elliott did this workshop for the first time in '68. I recall saying that, but I'm not so sure where the question comes from. So I'm sorry if I didn't say something right. I will check that. So thank you for the tip. I guess I made a mistake there.
And we have a question from Zarin Jacob. Recently, the founder of a larger movement said, I am stepping down from an official capacity, and I am now going to be an ordinary member. Imho, this is making power invisible if it is not made explicit, manage it well, etc. Any comments? You have it, or I have to tell you again?
Please tell me again. Yeah.
Okay. Zarine say, recently, the founder of a larger movement said, I am stepping down from an official capacity, and I am now going to be an ordinary member. IMHO, this is making power invisible if it is not made explicit, manage it well. Any comments?
Yeah, I think this is a dilemma, actually, what to do with your power. I think you can always, if you step, the idea is that if someone steps down from an official position that is visible, if I understand it right, I hope so. Yeah, but one should be, you know, make healthy choices, of course, and there's always a way of making sure that the ones that come behind you, after you, take over the power in the way that you want to. So I would understand such a choice, and I would say it's your responsibility to be able to do your work also. And if you step down from a position, yeah, still it's a dilemma. You can also share your power. We are used to having to give up a position, but maybe you can just share it with someone if you can't carry it anymore. If I understand the question right. Thanks. Thank you so much for all these questions.
And then the last one is Ian Mallow. I know this is a big question to answer spontaneously, but still, what kind of anti-racist, post-racist utopia would you like us to work towards? What would it look like?
You know, it's a big dream. It would be an environment that, you know, I just found within a wonderful mixed group within SIETAR, which was an experience that, you know, I had little times in my life, and I loved it because it was in so many ways equal in all its differences. That would be the world that I imagine as a utopia. And you know, I mean, if I experienced it in the small, I can have it in big. I've been doing this work for 27 years now as an active anti-racist, and that means that a lot of people don't like what I do. They dislike what I say, and most of the times that's people with power and privilege. And you know, that's not so nice because it closes a lot of powerful doors, but at the same time it means that people in marginalized positions understand what I talk about, and they get inspired, and they and other people of power also use their power to make a change. So that will take some time, but I'm hopeful, and I'm making changes in my social environment. And I've already seen that, and that's very joyful.
Thank you so much, Seyda, because we are landing to the end of the session. Sure, we need something like hours, day, weeks, month, and year listening and enjoying Şeydâ Buurman-Kutsal session. And right now, we just want to say thank you so much for our wonderful audience for having you. And then we just want also to tell you, mark in your agenda the next anti-racism learning session in April, who will turn around the LGBT community, and we will be very happy to have you again. Seyda, please, can you say the last word for this great and wonderful session?
Thank you so much for, you know, taking the time, trying to understand my English, and I invite you to be active.
Thank you, everyone, and see you the next anti-racism learning series. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thanks.